shortly. Thank you all so much for joining us. My name is Sean Connolly, and I'm the Executive Director of the Arch Street Meeting House Preservation Trust, which operates the Arch Street Meeting House as a museum and historic site. And we're so excited today because we get to talk about the drinkers. This might be a year-long exploration of drinker history because the semi-quincentennial of the United States is next year. And obviously the drinker family overlaps so heavily with 1776, but also they are buried outside, probably, as I learned today when I was writing my portion of the presentation, in the southwest corner of our parking lot. So some of you might have parked directly on top of them, which is pretty extraordinary. So we're so thrilled that you could join us, and I'm forcing John to say two sentences, well, a sentence about the drinkers and how excited we are that you all are here.
Yeah, George McFeely called me a couple months ago and said, hey, could I come down and meet with Sean and we could talk about this drinker family reunion coming up. And all this has to do with, as you said, what is it, the semi-quincentennial?
That is how I've been told to say it.
I think that's the 250th anniversary coming up. And he asked me for some names and mailing lists. And so I've had various emails and mailing lists and put it together. So don't ask me how any of you are related. The other thing I wanted to mention, there are a couple of books that were published in the last couple of years you all should read if you haven't. One is called World of Trouble by Richard Godbeer. Easy name. Imagine if his daughter had married my son, Richard, Lucy Godbeer, drinker. So anyway, so Richard Godbeer, and there's another book called Prisoners of Congress. I don't know who. Anybody know the author of that? Remember?
Ned Donahue.
Ned Donahue. Both of them. I know that the World of Trouble was basically Elizabeth Drinker's diary rewritten in a readable format. And then the other thing, if you haven't seen it, there's a plaque down Second. If you go down Race and take a right on Second Street, there's a plaque to Elizabeth Drinker, which my brother Ned had a lot to do with getting that put up. I think right now. And then there's a street down there called Quarry Street, which we're trying to get changed back to Drinker, because that was Drinker's Alley for a lot of years. Anyway, thank you all for coming, and good luck figuring out where you fit into this audience.
Thank you. So the first approximation to all Philadelphia Quakers are related. Yes, I think they were.
Thanks so much, John. And yes, this is, I think, just the beginning of what I hope is a rich exploration of the drinker family over this year, next year, and then hopefully if we find that there are a lot of drinkers who are super interested in this history, and the public as well, a big gathering of folks maybe in 2027. That would be really exciting. So my job here is really to just review some of that history of the drinker family and try to intersect it with the building's history before I turn it over to Chris, who's going to do a deep dive into how you all can do some genealogical research about your family. Many of you are drinkers and other families as well. Here we go. That's the name of it. And this is Arch Street Meeting House. You all are here now. Who's been here before, by the way? Excellent. Okay, so not as many folks as everyone, which is great. The historic West Room is really why we're famous, and it is a room that sadly dates after the construction of it dates after the drinkers had passed away, but they were obviously instrumental in the construction of this building. So this would have been sort of the homage that they had in the back of at least Henry Drinker's mind as they were fundraising for the construction of the meeting house. And we will go into that room at the conclusion of this presentation for those who want an additional small tour of the building. So I'm going to start really with how the Quakers and the drinkers got to the crisis that they did get, which intersects with the property, American politics, and really the birth of our country, which starts in the mid 1700s. So who is Quaker here? Let's start with that. Okay, so half the audience, let's say. Quakers used to run Pennsylvania. They controlled all three branches of government, basically, and they, set up a pretty good system of government, equal branches of government, and it used as inspiration for what would follow, which was, of course, the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, and our modern system of government. That was really put to the test because of the 7 Years' War, or what we in America call the French and Indian War. And the Quaker government at that time was met with a big challenge. How do we be part of England, but the English are asking us to raise money, tax money, that will subsequently go to fund militias. And in Pennsylvania, one of the few colonies that did not have a militia, and taxing for the raising of arms was outlawed by the Quaker government. So it put the Quakers in a real position, and a real, they had to really sort through this, and eventually they were forced out of government. So we've got two pictures here. This is Benjamin Franklin. He's kind of the driving force of the forcing out of Quaker government. In the 1760s, Franklin and his junta coffee drinking folks came in. They were members of the Provincial Council of Pennsylvania, and they said, we're going to pass a law that is going to allow to tax people, and then that tax money is going to go to a militia. And the Quakers obviously all resigned from government in protest over that. So that's setting the stage for what the drinkers will have to endure, because now they're no longer in a colony that is controlled by a pacifist government. They're in a militarized, semi-militarized colonial state now, which is very different from William Penn's vision for Pennsylvania. So now we have the drinkers themselves. We've got Elizabeth and Henry Drinker, some great silhouettes. Are these at HSP?
Yes.
They are, yeah, so you can see the actual silhouettes themselves. I thought they were, I couldn't find a credit title for these, but I'm glad to know that they are at HSP. So the drinkers are born into this world that starts as Quaker in the 1730s when they're born, but then in their prime, they're in a world that is no longer exclusively Quaker run. And the drinkers represent a great deal of Quaker wealth and merchants. Obviously, Henry, James, and Drinker ran a very prolific merchant exchange company with ships that would sail all over the world. And so they had built a lot of wealth. And Quakers across Pennsylvania had done exceptionally well under British colonial rule. They benefited from the power, soft and hard power, that the Royal Navy was able to espouse around the world. And so their ships were able to sail, and so Quakers, including Henry Drinker, did exceptionally well and were able to build not only a house on 2nd Street, but also have country homes out in Germantown as well. And so when the Revolutionary War comes along, again, it's another crisis, not only for the Quakers, but also for the drinkers themselves. Henry in particular, he is the clerk of the Philadelphia Monthly Meeting, which is the most powerful Quaker entity in Pennsylvania. It is the largest Quaker monthly meeting, and a monthly meeting for those non-Quakers is a worship community, a Quaker worship community that worships weekly, not monthly. They meet monthly for business of the meeting. And so he is the clerk. He is the head of that Quaker community, meaning that he has so much power in the Quaker colonial world. And that is, to a certain extent, in direct opposition to what Franklin and the First and Second Continental Congresses are trying to set up. And so by 1776, we know that obviously the Quakers know what's happening. John Dickinson, is he a Quaker? Is he not a Quaker? We'll never quite know, but he is the only member who signed, or he does not sign the Declaration of Independence. He decides to not, to abstain from that vote for independence. And that might be because of his Quaker lineage. So it puts the Quakers in a real hard position. On July 16th, 1776, Elizabeth notes that American soldiers had broken open the Friends Meeting House on Market Street and had taken up abode there. That's really the first abode, residence in the meeting house. And that's the Great Meeting House that was overseen in the early 1680s, the construction of that on Market Street. Ironically, Elizabeth Drinker does not mention independence on the 4th of July, on the 5th of July, on the 6th of July. This is really the first reference we have to independence, which is that the Americans are here and they're taking over the Quaker meeting houses. So it's a shocking situation, I think, for Quakers for sure. This is again the beginning, the setting of the stage of a great crisis for many, many Quakers in Pennsylvania and really beyond. I should have mentioned this is her actual marker on 2nd Street, which we actually helped fundraise for. So that was installed in 2019. So in 1777, in January, Elizabeth notes that 5 American soldiers had now quartered in her home. So this is, again, an ironic comparison to British colonial rule. Obviously, one of the reasons the American government was so upset because of the Quartering Act, British soldiers legally being able to be quartered in your home. Ironically, Elizabeth Drinker is saying that, no, there are, in fact, American soldiers being quartered in my home. So really shocking. And throughout the spring, things begin to get worse and worse for the Drinkers and Quakers more broadly. Loyalty oaths were beginning to be required or requested, I guess, by the colonial government. American military officials were asking for supplies, the lead of clocks, for instance, to be melted down and turned into musket balls, blankets, and obviously more. And then in that year, the General Assembly of Pennsylvania passes a new militia law. And so this is really setting up, arrests potentially are going to be on the horizon. So now we're 1 year. Let's set the stage. It's July 4th, 1777. Elizabeth notes that fireworks were being shot off around the city in celebration of the 1-year anniversary of independence. Many Quaker shops, though, she notes, were looted and glass was broken because they did not partake in the celebrations on that day. In August of 1777, General Sullivan writes to the Congress accusing Quakers as being spies and traitors. This is obviously greatly written in Ned Donahue's book, Prisoners of Congress. And the Executive Council of Pennsylvania soon issues orders for the arrest of some 40 Quakers, including Henry Drinker. He was held in the city for most of September, but then the British Army quickly approaching. Lord Howe is coming up from the south, having landed near Baltimore, and he's quickly defeats Washington at the Battle of Brandywine. And so people in Philadelphia, a bit of chaos. They know that the British are coming, and so the American government flees along with their prisoners, first to Reading and then finally to Winchester in Virginia. And Henry Drinker arrives on September 29th, and over the months of his imprisonment, he and Elizabeth exchange some really extraordinary letters back and forth to each other. And now we really get to see Elizabeth at her prime. She is alone. She's now a single woman in Philadelphia, and she has to decide what to do to save her family. And so she starts this extraordinary journey, engaging with other Quaker women who's had their husbands arrested. She travels and meets with Martha and George Washington at Valley Forge, and she travels back and forth between the city and Lancaster, PA, and York, Pennsylvania, where the Congress and the Executive Council of Pennsylvania are based during the British occupation of Philadelphia. By late April, Elizabeth and several other extraordinary Quaker women, they successfully negotiate the release, the pressuring of the release of their husbands, and Henry Drinker is able to come back to Philadelphia. This, though, does not end the crisis of the Revolutionary War and how it is dealt with within the Quaker world. Quakers continue to have tension with the new American government. For instance, John Drinker, Henry Drinker's brother, is arrested by a roving militia band in October of 1779. He is eventually released, but still there's clear tension between this pacifist group, a huge portion of the population of Pennsylvania at the time, and the new American government. After the war, though, Quaker business does well. It continues to do well throughout the 19th century, but the Drinkers in particular do exceptionally well. Here's a picture of Martha Washington, of course, well after this point in the Revolutionary War, which really sets us up for the next interaction of the Drinker family. We have decades plus of peace in Pennsylvania for the most part, but 1793 is around the horizon, and Elizabeth Drinker is remembered perhaps most for her diarying of the 1793 yellow fever epidemic. This is a famous drawing of Stephen Girard. It's called Girard's Terrorism, and it is he was a French doctor who was helping people throughout that time, and obviously a lot of people were dying, and no one understood the illness, much like we all experienced in COVID. So Elizabeth Drinker and her children during this time in August of 1793 were actually not in the city. They were summering in Germantown, as did many Quaker and other affluent families at the time. But Henry was in the city in 1793, sort of seeing the epidemic begin in earnest. And by the end of August, clearly things were getting quite bad. So he goes to Germantown, and on the 2nd of September, she notes that 2nd Street, this is a report either from Henry coming back or from the servants who were going back and forth between their house on 2nd Street and up in Germantown. She notes that 2nd Street was shut up from one corner to the next, and depopulated the whole city by deaths and flights. And there were coffins that were being kept in piles by the State House for the poor. So her journal is really a lens into this extraordinary time period, and the first real big epidemic that is captured in journals in American history. September, though, the Drinkers come back to Philadelphia, and we get Elizabeth's experience of the actual burial ground here at Arch Street. On September 12th, she notes that there were 2 or 3 bodies thrown into the Friends burying ground. And on the 27th, she writes that she saw 10 graves open and 13 the next day. So that's a huge number of burials happening. I mean, all told, 10% of Philadelphia's population, roughly 5% of the city, were killed during the yellow fever epidemic, and hundreds of members of Philadelphia Monthly Meeting certainly passed and are buried on the grounds during that time period. And Elizabeth's account gives us one of the most well-rounded understandings of yellow fever to date. Now I'm going to spend a little bit of time on the building, and then I'll hand it over to Chris. The Drinkers were also instrumental in the conversion of this property from a huge active place of burial to one of the largest Quaker meeting houses in the world. So she notes that in 1801, on July 20th, she's taking notice of the intention of our friends to level the burial ground and burying in flat rows, disapproved. She did not like this, although Henry was obviously clerk of the meeting at the time. So what was happening was that the yellow fever pushed the burial ground at Arch Street to its limits. We know that there are nearly 13,000 internments on the property, just the Quakers alone, upwards of 20,000 people. Originally, they were buried in family plots. So you did have the Drinker family plot over there. You had the Norrises of Norristown over here. And over 100+ years of burying really going to fill up the ground. So there was an attempt to revise how burials were going to occur, but also the Great Meeting House and all these other smaller meeting houses that made up the Philadelphia Monthly Meeting were old. They were in disrepair. How do we solve this problem? Well, we already own the ground here. We do have a bunch of our relatives in here. Maybe there's a way to, if we dig them up and move them into what's now the parking lot, we can make a foundation of a building. Clearly, Elizabeth, as a result of that quote, takes some disapproval of that idea, but they do level a portion of the ground and lay the foundation of the property. She notes that by 1804, much of the ground has been leveled, displacing many internments in preparation for the construction of the meeting house. And the burial ground wall had been raised from 4 feet to 9. So during the yellow fever epidemic, it was coming up to about here. Now it's raised to 9 feet, probably in hopes that no one will get thrown over the wall anytime soon. On April 15th, 1805, here's some pictures of the family plots, and then here's the burial rows, chronological rows that are occurring at this time period as well. Oh, I should also note that my next slide is, why do you think Elizabeth Drinker is so upset about this? Well, she does have relatives in the burial ground. We actually have her tombstone of her mother. This is Sarah Sandwith. And so that all the tombstones at the time were actually ripped up. They were deliberately torn up and then buried in 2 pits in the property. So to see her own mother's tombstone ripped out of the ground and buried in a pit probably was a little upsetting to her for sure. By 1805, though, on April 15th, she notes that the building, a portion of it at least, had been completed. These are some schematic designs for the property over the course of several years, and it was to be used for the first women's yearly meeting in the building, and that far too many people showed up, upwards of 1,600 people in the East Room, which is far too many for being used for the women's meeting house. And that the crowd was so crowded that her friend's daughter came away from the building, so decided to leave because it was too crowded. It was in this decade after the East Wing was completed, but before the whole building was completed, that we see a huge change in leadership in Quakerism in Philadelphia. So the Drinkers pass away, the Pembertons, large old Quaker family, those in leadership pass away. And so these elders now, Henry and Elizabeth, die, and they are interred under spot numbers 8 and 9, where you can park under, probably. That's right. So while Elizabeth may have felt the irony and the disruption of the construction of this building, the real irony is that because of the construction of this property, we actually opened that additional plot for burying. So we brought in more dirt. And so she was actually able to be interred on the property as a result of the construction of the meeting house. So that's a nice little nod there. And so Henry dies in 1809 and Elizabeth in 1807. And they remain, I think, one of our most famous burials interred on the property. So that's a little, many of you are drinkers, so you may have heard that information already, but I hope a sprinkling of some new information. And that is my section of the presentation. Very excited to hand it over to George to introduce Chris.
I'm George Damiani. I'm on the Preservation Trust board, and I'm not actually Quaker. I'm what's called Quaker adjacent. It means my stepfather was a Quaker. I went to GFS, etc. So I'm also drinker adjacent because we have mutual family. So, but anyway, I'm here to introduce Chris Damiani. So Chris has worked at the Historical Society of Pennsylvania for 13 years in various capacities. He currently works in the Access Service as an Access Service Librarian, whose duties include assisting library visitors, as well as performing historical and genealogical research. He previously worked at Fort Mifflin down on the Delaware as an educator and tour guide. He received his bachelor's and master's degrees in American history from Westchester University. So I hand the mic over to Chris.
Thank you, everyone. I had hoped to find all the connections to all the drinkers here and do a big family tree before I came tonight, but it wasn't to be. But hopefully, in my presentation, you'll get some of the some tips that can lead you to making those connections. So, starting your genealogy at HSP. So starting your genealogy can be many things, exciting, confusing, maybe even a little bit scary. Does anybody do genealogical research? Few people? Great. So a lot of times, one of the questions we get at HSP, people come in and they don't know where to start. They say, I don't know anything, or how do I get started? I'm so overwhelmed. Some will have information. There'll be letters and books and things passed down through the generations, others not so much. Really, the easiest way to begin is start with what you know. Talk to your older relatives. Family lore is important. You hear stories about, I had an uncle who had a store in Philadelphia, things like that. Sometimes what you'll find out is it's not always quite true, but family lore is important, and there's usually some ring of truth to it. And if nothing else, if you don't know anything, you can start with yourself. Start with what you know. It can be yourself. Keep in mind, though, it is a long and complicated journey, as Shamel, my friend Shamel, can attest to. And of course, we can't talk about doing family history without mentioning the big two. which are ancestry.com and Family Search. You can do genealogy without using either one of these, but it makes it much more difficult. And you know, with all the amounts of records they have digitized nowadays, you really need to utilize these sources. HSP has partnered with both Ancestry and Family Search to digitize and index materials from our collection. Ancestry has something called the Pennsylvania Church and Town Records. Family Search has several HSP collections called HSP Births and Baptisms and HSP Marriages. Each of those sites have millions of records, in fact, billions of records digitized. Oh, I'm sorry. That's HSP is the Historical Society of Pennsylvania. And we are located down at 13th and Locust Streets. Ancestry is a subscription-based site where Family Search is something that's free to access from home. So before we get into actually coming to HSP and doing research, just want to briefly touch on the types of things that you'll find there. And this is not a comprehensive list, but things like published and unpublished family histories. Often we have a large, so I should take a moment just to say our family history library at HSP is very extensive. We're one of the largest genealogical centers on the East Coast. We have information from every state east of the Missouri River, and including a very large North Carolina collection, things like that. And things you'll find are things like published and unpublished family histories. A lot of times we'll have people come in and lo and behold, 75, 100 years ago, somebody put together a family history that nobody knew about this, since been forgotten. We have it there. You'll find things like Bible records, church records, which are things like baptisms, marriages, deaths, cemetery records, wills, county histories, tax records, court records, financial records, and personal accounts. This is one that's pretty unique. Personal accounts, letters, diaries, things like that. And those sources are very unique because to HSP and places like HSP, because they really do to kind of bring the past to life. I wanted to briefly touch on that just for a minute. You heard about Elizabeth Drinker's diaries. We have the original diaries at HSP. So if you wanted to come in and take a look at them, you can. They've been transcribed. They've been, written about in the new book that we heard about tonight. They've been kind of data mined in a lot of different places, but there's nothing like seeing the original. This is a page out of Elizabeth's diary from October 1781. And it's a good example of how personal accounts do really put things in perspective. So just to see what she says here, sorry about that. Heard from New York of the death of her old acquaintance and friend, Nellie Mood. Also of the death of Thomas Crammond, a young officer who had lived 6 months with us while British troops were in the city. He died after 8 days' illness. She also puts kind of these little anecdotes in there that give that really good snapshot of 18th century life in Philadelphia. And in this one, I just I love this one because it's one of those anecdotes that gives that context. Peter Barker has been very troublesome this fall, and last summer at our meetings of discipline, particularly threatening violently, thumping with a hammer, etc., etc. So, so these sort of small assigns that she puts in her diary and things you'll find in other personal letters really do bring the past to life and bring these people from a name on a page to being a real person. So you may be thinking, well, all of this is well and good, but how do I even find this stuff? So that's where we can help you at HSP. When you do come to HSP for research, we have a variety of electronic databases that you can use for your research. So we have access to ancestry.com in our library. We're a Family Search affiliate library, and as I mentioned, Family Search is a free site to use, But at some point, if you're doing research on family search, you might come across a point where you want to look at a record and it doesn't let you. It'll say, you need to visit a family search center. We're a family search affiliate library, which will give you that access, and that's what you would get by accessing it through HSP. We also have access to Find My Past, which is another subscription-based site, newspapers.com, and the Redex Historical Newspaper Database. Newspapers are fantastic resources also for doing genealogy. So we have newspapers there in microfilm, paper form, and then we have newspapers available electronically. I also wanted to talk about a database called HSP Encounters. Encounters is a database that is developed by staff at HSP. And what it is a compilation of different genealogical collections. And many of those were not indexed. And what we did is we went through those, gleaned a lot of genealogical information out of them, turned them into a searchable database. And this database is accessible to members offsite from HSP and people who come in to visit and research at HSP. It's a work in progress. We're adding to it all the time. We have volunteers who tirelessly go through collections and add these records to the database. So I'm going to pause the presentation just for a minute. I just need to, what I want to do is I just want to bring up
I'm not sure if you're going to be able to fix it out of that screen.
I see.
The way the cable says.
Gotcha. Okay. So
But if at the end.
I can, yeah. Sorry about that. So I was going to go into encounters just to show you what sort of records are there. So essentially what they are we have records of things like the Orphan Society of Pennsylvania. We have things like the Oliver Bear Funeral Home records and things like the school records of Philadelphia. And it's a searchable database that you can search by name. What it'll do is it'll bring up the record. Depending on which database you're searching at the time, you'll find sometimes we'll be able to put all the information into the record online in encounters. So like the Orphan Society, you'll find information from the admission books, and each database will tell you what you're going to find in the record. So you'll find things from the admission books, which will talk about how the child came into their care, who, if they knew who the mother or father were, and then, if they were placed. And then a lot of times the Orphan Society will go out and check on them and do a wellness check for them, and they'll note all that. Other databases like the Oliver Bear, you'll get a record. Oliver Bear was a big funeral home, still exists today. Oliver Bear records in encounters, it'll give you, say, yes, the record does exist. It'll give you some basic information about them, and then you would have to come to HSP to view the original record. So I also wanted to talk about one of the other tools is Discover. Discover is our online catalog. It contains both published sources as well as manuscript collections. So things like published family histories, unpublished family histories, family notes, county records, and church records will all appear in Discover. The nice thing about Discover is it does pull names from encounters as well as the digital library. In relation to the drinkers, we do have quite a bit of material, both manuscript and published sources, including genealogies already completed on the drinker family. And then after the presentation, I'll show you how to get there and show you how to use Discover. Another resource we have at HSP is our card catalog. We still have some. Has anybody used the old card catalog before computers and all those fun things? So we still have an old-fashioned card catalog at HSP, and it's a valuable resource we could never do without. The card catalog is broken up into different sections, which you see up here. It's broken up into manuscripts, which are letters, diaries, etc. Library company manuscripts. I was talking with someone earlier that asked about the library company, which is our sister institution. Their manuscripts currently are housed at HSP, and we have cards for those. Broadsides, which are larger printed, usually printed notices, signs, things like that. We have a graphics section, coats of arms section, fire insurance and maps, music, Afro-Americana, genealogy, and newspapers. The thing about the card catalog is, so not to get too technical, when you're cataloging for a library, Discover is what's cataloged at what they call a collection level. And all that means is if a term or a person or a place is in the description of something. So if you have a collection about George Washington and you search for George Washington, that's going to come up and say, hey, we have this George Washington collection. But if there are letters in there from other people that are not listed in that description saying, you know, this collection contains letters of George Washington, you're not going to find that in Discover just because it's not done on that level of detail. Where it is done on that level of detail is in the card catalog. It's done on what they call an item level. So all that means is every individual letter, diary, item has its own corresponding card. As you can see in this here. This card catalog here is a card, digitized card, showing a letter from Benjamin Rush to Henry Drinker, dated March 23rd, 1796. It's a receipted bill for medical attention. Gives you the location. And so if you wanted to see this letter, you could come fill out a call slip for the Drinker papers and see this letter. So the card catalog, you can see why the card catalog is a valuable resource. It contains a vast majority of what we have at HSP. Unfortunately, there's always a caveat. Not everything is in it because it stopped being updated in the 1980s. In 1980s, cataloging changed, and they realized that going through all these collections was too time consuming to keep adding cards. So a majority of stuff is in there, but not everything. We also have a tool called subject guides. Subject guides are good tools. They give general information on a topic about resources we have at HSP. Some of the topics that we have there are ethnic history, family history and genealogy, ship and passenger lists, and tax records. We also have a research guide that goes over a lot of what I'm talking about in terms of searching tonight. It also has a video, so you don't have to read through it all. It has a step-by-step video to kind of guide you through on how to best use both the card catalog and Discover. We also have a digital library. The digital library is a digital repository for items that we have in the collection. We have over 20,000 records with over 100,000 images from the collection. It is keyword searchable. You probably recognize this building that's in the photo there. You can download low resolutions of these images, and the records, again, also appear in Discover. So you can go directly to the digital library to search that, or you can go and Discover and do that as well. The digital library is also continuously being added to. But I always tell people that, you know, a very small, although 100,000 images is a lot, HSP's collection is pretty large. It's 22 million manuscripts. I know because I counted every one of them. It's part of the job of being there. It's why I've been there 14 years. That's what I've been doing, actually. So we do have a dedicated staff that's always constantly digitizing, but it's just a very small fraction of what we have. But the good thing is we do have, you know, we do have beautiful images like this watercolor by David Kennedy, but we also have fire insurance maps. We have fire insurance policies digitized. You know, so we have letters and diaries and things like that that you can also see. So I did say, you know, we do hope you'll come and visit us at HSP. We do have a membership program. You don't have to be a member to come and research. You can, you know, we're open to the public. You can walk in off the street, come in and say, hey, I want to do some research. Great. We'd love to have you. We do have an appointment schedule. So we do ask, if you know you want to come, make an appointment because that reserves a spot for you. We're open Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, 10 to 4, Wednesday, 1 to 7. And we always have somebody there, like me, that can help guide you in your research. So we're not just going to say, okay, great, you're here, go off and do your research, go find your family and good luck. No, we don't do that there. You know, we always have somebody there to kind of help guide you. But there are some things you can do ahead of time if you want to, you know, to better help utilize your time, like looking and discover, just to kind of get an idea of what we have. For those of you who are interested in research, but you're not able to visit HSP, I just wanted to let everyone know we have services that can help you. We have a quick search service, which is ideal kind of to look at a specific source. So sometimes we'll get people say, you know, hey, I can't get there. I see you have the church records, or you have Quaker meeting records. You know, can you look for those for me? I'm looking for my great-great-great-grandfather, and they'll give a name. And so, or they'll say, hey, I know, you know, I looked online, I saw you have this letter, I can't get in, can you make a copy for me? Quick search is something that is good for that. We also get people who are unable to visit, and we have a research by mail service. People still do use the mail. We use the mail all the time. It's a more comprehensive service just for broader searches. Things like, I'm searching for the parents of my ancestor born in Pennsylvania in 1802. I don't know anything more than that. So that is another service we have that we could use to kind of guide you. And then I also wanted to mention a brand new digital history project that just hasn't even officially opened yet, but it's got a soft opening through Revolutionary City. It's called the Revolutionary City Portal to a Nation's Founding. It's a collaborative project between a number of institutions, including American Philosophical Society, Library Company, the McNeil Center, HSP, and other partners. And it's really designed to highlight many different voices not traditionally heard in the Revolutionary War narrative, and it highlights some of the less well-known or under-processed collections. One of the things that, and I'll also show you this as well, included in the project is a section on Quaker women in 18th century Philadelphia. They also have digitized versions of Elizabeth Brinker's diaries. All the diaries are digitized on Rev City. So it's really a really interesting and cool new project that they're doing.
Encourage you all to check out history. I've done some research there myself before starting this job, actually, about Quaker history. It's super fascinating. And it is really cool to see the actual objects themselves. It's great to park above Emily Drinker when you can. It's great to see the actual text she wrote when you can. So it's super exciting. So thank you, Chris. Right now, those who want to can join me. It is down some steps, sadly, but into the western. Those who don't want to join us there could head straight through here. Those who are drinker family relatives or drinker family friends are, of course, invited to dinner after this, right in the reception room, which has been set during this this presentation. So I hope those that can remain can. And those who want to see the West Room and all of its glory, I have some friends there. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
So much.